Bay 13 is now available for loading. I repeat, Bay 13 now available for loading.
Turn this down. Hi, everybody. Alright, I'm gonna put on some just like lo-fi or something, just so there's a little bit of background noise. Let's see here. Alright, happy Friday. It is Friday? Yeah, it's Friday. Let's see. Get some chill stuff on in the background. Desktop audio goes up. No, goes in. I don't know what I'm doing today. Alright. Hi, everybody. The Twitchification of YouTube. A little bit. The new XP thing. Yeah, if you guys don't know about it, it's kind of like you gain XP for chatting, which is, you know, to churn up engagement, which is honestly pretty cool. I can't be mad at it, necessarily. I'm still trying to get used to this new mic stand. It's, does it go lower? No. That's as low as it goes? Alright, that's as low as it goes. That's kind of shitty. Alright. Well, hi, everybody. Seems cool. YouTube really did small work for it. It's actually smart then. It's going to keep me going. Yeah, exactly. It's like gambling, just not gambling. Get you a rank in the stream, and I think it resets every month. It's pretty cool. But all right, everybody, as you can tell, we are doing portfolio reviews today. So if you submitted one in the portfolio review requests in the Discord, that's what we're going to be doing today. So I want to do this differently than last time, because last time I ended up doing a bunch of portfolios for people who weren't immediately here. So people couldn't get like live feedback. So if you are here in chat, do me a favor, go into the Discord and just react to your post with a green check mark to let me know that you're in here, and I will start going off of that. If not, and we don't see any of those, I will just start from the top from last time for the people that we missed last time. I do want to try to get doing these a little bit more often. I just could not find the like will to do it, because like there's so much stuff I have going on that like I'm trying to balance getting projects done as well as doing like community support stuff. So let's see here. I'm going to give it a couple of minutes just to see if anyone throws a green check mark in there. If not, we will just go ahead and start. And we'll just kind of go from what has been submitted so far. But hopefully you all had a wonderful week. Hope you guys are all doing good. I need the spin to win. Yeah, man. I actually may have a resource for you depending on the login credentials needed. What is it? Mine's sort of all the way at the beginning of chat. Okay. Is it? BH. Let's find you. Is your name different in Discord? Oh, no. I found you. Look at that. Okay, cool. Let's do yours first. All right. Oh, yours is like actually one of the first ones, so that's cool. Beautiful. Legally recorded. He recorded it himself and dispersed. The author of Drawing with Force did a live stream last week on his book, and it's been recording. Oh, that's cool. I'd be down to take a look at that. All right, let's get you opened up here. BH. Okay. Yeah, actually, I was looking at yours today because I was going through these. Cool. All right, so let me preface this again. Before I do any of these, I am not a character artist, so it's a little bit more different for me to review character portfolios, but I will give you my thoughts on them and what I would kind of look at changing. But for stuff like this, definitely go and look for a character artist who does do portfolio reviews, because they're going to have much better insight for you than I do. But I'm going to give you what I can. So let's start with your most recent one. I saw that you did this one with Abe Leal's last competition thing, which I've never looked into those. It's cool that he does those. But all right, so this was like this was the last. I don't even know how to say that. Is it like Sarah Aurelia? But okay, cool. So you have two here. So this is one thing that I do want to look at. I like that you post your work. It's good that you're showcasing like different lighting and different like ways of rendering it out and stuff. But one of the things that you really should get in the habit of doing is showing some more intense breakdowns. Yeah, I know. Character for the first one for the non-character artist, but that's okay. I do what I can with these. One of the big things with portfolios that we want to make sure we're doing is you're showcasing like your understanding of the workflow just as much as your understanding of the artistic process. So while it's great to showcase the work, which you're improving really well over the past 4 projects that you've done, it's really important to start looking at how you can share your work. Like share like what you actually did. It's the thing that our teachers always used to yell at us for. Show your work in math. That's what we want to do here. So just to give you an example on like what I'm talking about, you did do well by showing your kind of grayscale, like your clay render almost. But things that other people want to see and recruiters want to see is, do you understand the basic technical breakdowns in the back? Do you understand UVing? Do you understand wireframe, like your actual topology, stuff like that? We do want to see stuff like that because it is important to not only understand your skills as an artist, but also understand your technical level. The more information you can provide in that without providing over information, it's going to be more helpful to you in the long run when it comes to actually like going for jobs and applying for jobs. I always recommend just do have a clay render in there, have a wireframe render in there, and have a UV render in there. They're all pretty simple to set up. And it's just generally a good idea to show that you understand that technical side of it, because you're already growing on the artistic side. And this piece is really cool. I like that you spent some time developing some emotion in the character's face instead of just having a stagnant, like static character. That's one of the big things that I see a lot of the times that people will do, is they'll just have their character in like a T-pose. And it's one of the biggest, like, it's almost like a letdown. So I like that you threw some emotion into this character. I like that you have this kind of backdrop and everything going on. One thing that I'm really noticing here that needs a lot of work though, the skin. So your skin feels almost kind of like waxy at this point. It's kind of flat and waxy. So if you haven't started looking into it yet, start looking at subsurface scattering and understanding how that kind of technology works and that workflow works. It really helps sell the realism of skin. I wish I knew a little bit more about this competition, because I don't know a lot about it. I don't know if it was supposed to be like stylized. So if it was supposed to be stylized, correct me if I'm wrong. But that's the big thing that stands out to me, is just kind of the lack of depth in the skin. Otherwise, your cloth is looking really nice. You've got some really nice kind of variation within the texture in the cloth, so it's not all just one solid color. That's a big mistake people make all the time, is they have cloth that's just like one solid, like, just textile. And we know in reality, like, stuff gets stained, things don't always work that way. That's something that you did really well here, and you provided a lot of like texture and depth in your cloth. I get what you mean. I was a little rushed. It was open to any artist. Okay, cool. Yeah, I just wasn't sure what the rules on the whole competition were. And that's okay. Like, if you're rushed, you're rushed. That's totally understandable. Definitely, if you can, at some point, revisit this one a little bit. Play with some subsurface scattering on the skin. Figure out how those maps work, because it's really close. Like, you're getting really close with this one, and I feel like if you add a little bit more into the actual, like, kind of the technical side of it with your lighting and your material sets, you'll have a really solid piece here. Because I already like that you have the emotion and everything in here. You have that, like, he's almost like wary of people. That's something that a lot of people don't do, and I love that you did that. Would have sold the look for it much better. Yeah, and that's totally okay. That's what this is for, right? Like, this is how we learn. One thing that I am a little concerned about, your height map looks a little, like, crazy. I might tone that back a little bit, because it does almost make the skin look overly speckled. Like, I know it's supposed to be like old wrinkly skin, but it's looking a little bit rough. But otherwise, like, you know, playing with some material stuff and then just changing your presentation here, adding a little bit of the background technical information to really help show this. You know, show what the character looks like without the clothing, or if you can, like, do a little bit of focus on the props. We always try to find a balance between just enough information to show, like, the work that you did, but also not overloading people with too much information to where they click off the piece. So you have a really good start here, and I really like this character. And then I remember seeing this guy. I remember I think you posted this one in the Discord when you were making this one. So again, neat concept. Skin definitely needs some work. It's the same kind of concept. It's like looking at the way that flesh interacts with light, because you've got this really harsh backlight back here. And with this light popping through, we should see that coming through the flesh in a certain way. So you want that subsurface scattering. So there's definitely something there to be kind of looked at, especially because you want to do character and creature work, it seems. It's going to help you kind of get away from these waxy feeling, like, skin tones. This one you did a really good job on, like, getting the kind of like the meaty texture, the muscly texture in there. I think just taking it a little bit further and starting to learn how those shaders actually work. Your presentation here is really cool. I like that you've got the rotation, so that's good. So you're starting to play with the idea of, like, actually showcasing the entire model and showcasing what you did. But again, just lacking some of those, like, initial kind of setup things that really help show, like, all of the work that went into this process. One of the things that they look for a lot of the times is, did you actually retopologize this, or did you just Z-remesh this? So do you understand the technical workflow of retopology, and can you do that yourself? It's not something you have to do on every single project. You can, like, totally do it on just, like, one or two and just show that you know the process. But show somewhere in your portfolio that you understand that process. I would like to add the shadows are extremely sharp. This could have been not enough light. Let's see. Yeah, I could agree with that a little bit. The light in this one is definitely kind of harsh too. It's like coming from one, it's like overblowing his hand a little bit. But I think that's where I'm seeing, at least in your portfolio, that I would recommend focusing on, is working a little bit on your lighting and a little bit on your material sets. Your texturing seems like it's doing pretty good. His skin could use a little bit more, like, micro detailing as far as, like, the different kind of, like, sub layers of flesh. But I think if you start playing with some of those things and figuring out how to get your characters just a little bit higher up, that'll be good. Again, kind of hard for me because I'm not a character artist. I've done one creature, so I am not an expert on it. But it seems like you're on a really good path. You have really good progression throughout these 4 pieces, and so I'm excited to see what you do next with this one, because you've got some really good progression going on there. And if you choose to kind of go back and work on these a little bit, these 2 were in Unreal, so it should be pretty easy to get the rest of that technical stuff figured out. But yeah, I hope that helps a little bit. I think there could be more information in the color. Like, I want to see. Yeah, that's kind of what I meant by, like, the layering of the skin. Like, there should be a little bit more. So just to give you an example, where is the Citipati? Did I do a diffuse render on this one? No. You can kind of see it though. So you can see how there's so many, like, different kind of, like, tonal colors underneath the skin. It's because this is built up over, like, 17 different layers. So, like, you have to look at the way that skin is built when you're doing this stuff, like the way, like, skin is, like, naturally constructed. is there are different layers to it. So we do have those, like Zach was saying, like the subdermal, all that stuff. Those are things to look at. So biggest thing, just looking at like your overall lighting, looking at your materials, and looking at some of your texturing techniques, just to get that extra detail in there. You don't have to go in and paint every little vein, but doing just that little bit of like extra work will help sell that character a little bit more. But thank you for submitting that. And as always, you're in the Discord, so if you have questions, like there's also plenty of character artists in the Discord that are much better at this than I am. So let's see. I'm going to go ahead and delete that one. Let's see. Who else? Let's see. Did we get any more green check marks? Is there anyone else in the chat right now that's actually present to get it reviewed, or should we just start rolling through? I'll give you guys a minute to respond here. You're welcome, BH. Thank you for submitting it. This is also my only example, so I'm like, it's not the best example, but it's an example that I've got, so. All right, so we haven't had anyone say anything yet, so I'm just going to go down the list then on what we've got, because we have a couple from last time that just didn't necessarily get taken a look at. So this one is... It do got fur. It do got fur. That fur crashed my computer more times than I am happy to admit. All right, so this next one is for... I'm sorry if I butcher your names, guys. It's Pratyush? Pratyush? Yush? I'm probably butchering that, I'm sorry. Okay. So, looks like you've got some prop stuff. Okay, cool. So let's take a look at this first one. This is a nice torture bench. That's cool. All right. Nice. Okay, so you do, it looks like you probably do like primarily low poly stuff, so that's cool. Yeah, so this is kind of what I'm talking about too, like just showcasing your work in whatever way you can find works best. This is a pretty common way that people do, is they'll just do like base metallic, they'll show their like texture maps and stuff. Looks like did you sculpt this in ZBrush? Yeah, you did. Okay, cool. I like the presentation on this. You did a really good job on the presentation if you are here. If you're not here, you'll probably watch the recording and that works too. Your presentation is super solid. One of the things that is generally kind of a better idea to follow is try to lighten your background a little bit. The darker backgrounds tend to kind of hide things, so you do want to kind of show off a little bit, so just lighten it up a bit. In future projects, I wouldn't change anything with this at this point, but this model is really solid. Your texturing is really nice. You have some really nice degradation on like the metal portions. It looks worn, it looks used. And quite honestly, like it doesn't look low poly to me, which is kind of great. So you did a really good job at keeping your forms together. And you didn't lose out on any like detailing. It's actually really kind of hard to tell that there was any low poly to this at all. So killer job on that. Your texturing looks good. I don't really have any edits on this one. This is just a pretty solid like medieval prop. I dig it. I dig it a lot. Let's see. It's your jack stand. Okay. Your texturing is really good, dude. Like you're doing a really good job. You're showing where it's appropriate. When you look at stuff like this, these are places where you would expect where to start, because like these things are going to clash against pieces under cars. They're going to break. They're going to chip. You've got rust where you should. You know, the damage on the wheels. So your texturing is very nice. Definitely appreciate your texturing on these models. Super solid. Is this another? Yes, this is another low poly asset. Yeah, dude, you're doing really good at making sure that these don't feel like low poly assets. So, killer job there. Honestly, like your stuff's looking really nice. One thing I would probably look at now, unless you're trying to be a prop artist, which just there's nothing wrong with that. Like if that's what you're going for, by all means go for it. You've kind of nailed the prop stuff. Like you're pretty good there. I would start looking at potentially doing something a little bit bigger, something that's going to push you a little bit as far as like challenge goes. But overall, like your renders are really crisp. Your textures are beautiful. Your models hold their form really, really well. Um, I would start taking a look at doing a little bit more kind of like out of your normal scope projects, because the general thing now is like we look at some of this stuff and like these are very beautiful projects. They're safe. And so try to find something that feels a little bit less like something that you would do normally. So whether that's like a car or like an old beaten up truck or something even crazy like a spaceship, you know, do something a little bit bigger that's a little bit more out of the norm, that will kind of help build your portfolio up and show that like you're not just stuck in your comfort zone of doing like little individual props. You're already doing a great job at those, so I think you can take your skills now at this point and do something much more complicated, just to kind of help build your portfolio up and show that you do have more variety to the work that you're doing. Because your 4 props are, these honestly look great, man. Like I don't really have many critiques on these at all. Presentation wise, you've kind of fixed your presentation as you went, so that's not something I'm really going to critique, because yeah, you're already doing what you should be doing. Yeah, overall, I would just say it's probably time to start pushing yourself a little bit and doing something a bit more complex, but otherwise, like you're doing really good. This stuff looks really good. I really like the texturing on this jack stand. You actually did a phenomenal job on this. This is something that a lot of people miss when they're doing stickers, is the paper that gets left behind. It's a really nice detail that you've added in there that people just generally don't do. And it's something that happens all the time. Like if you look at an old piece of hardware that had like some sort of sticker on it, that detail is often missed. So it's nice to see that you did that. But yeah, thank you so much for submitting your portfolio. Hopefully you get to watch the video. If not, it's since you weren't here. I appreciate you sending this one in, Pratyush. I'm so sorry if I'm saying that wrong. Let me get rid of that one. Okay, let's see. Oh, I deleted the wrong message. Hold on one second. Let me get caught up here. This is generally how I try to handle these, is I'll just delete these messages as we get through them. That way, whatever's left over, we can do on the next time. So, just out of curiosity, did anyone else jump in who wants to get their portfolio looked at now? If you haven't already marked it with a green check mark. Before I go on to the next one. When it crashes your PC, you know it's a success. Sometimes it works out that way. Other times it's because I didn't understand what I was doing, because it was my first time doing X-Gen. Alright, going once. Going twice. Moving on. Alright, we're gonna look at Razor 47. Alright. Okay, cool. So you've got a little bit more density. So that's good. Alright, so you also do some prop stuff. You got some vehicles in here. Alright, sweet. Let's take a look-see. Okay, nice. I really like the model and the texturing. You did a really good job on all of that. Was this a low poly acid as well? Yes, it was. Okay, cool. Some of you guys with the low poly stuff you do blows me away. Like, I, for whatever reason, cannot grasp this stuff, so it's cool that you guys are able to do this. Nice. Yeah, this looks really nice. I like that you're breaking down everything. You're showing your UVs. Your UVs look really clean. Everything's laid out very, very densely. I like that. That's always really good. Killer job on getting everything laid out so beautifully. That's rare to find. I don't even make my UVs this dense. That's cool. Super cool. I like that one. That's an awesome one. Let's look at this guy. So what is this? Walkman. So this amazing concept. Oh, okay, cool. This was a concept art. Nice. Okay. This is something that's really important to note. One of the things that a lot of people do is they stick with stuff that's safe, and so they stick with stuff that exists. Go out there, find some concept art. Find something on ArtStation. If you like it, message that artist, see if they're cool with you using it, and go for it. That's one of the biggest things that I love doing, is reaching out to other artists and being like, hey, can I work with your stuff? Because like you get to work on some really cool things, because a lot of the times, like, I'm not the most creative person in the world when it comes to coming up with my own ideas. I'm trying to get better at that, but like there are people out there who have these amazing ideas who just draw their stuff and they would love to see it in 3D or love to have another artist work on their stuff. So that's something that's always really cool, and I always love seeing it when people do this, because it's something that gets missed a lot, especially in hard surface. Like characters, it's a little bit more prevalent, because character art is essentially, you know, like that entire pipeline exists solely for concept art to like be turned into this like beautiful character. Unless you're truly like building from memory, like most people who do character art will work from some sort of initial sketch or concept art that was developed by somebody else. And for some reason, people who do hard surface stuff tend to just not do that, and they go for things like refrigerators and, you know, other safe everyday objects. So it's cool that you chose to do this. This is really cool. So it looks like you did kind of a higher poly asset here. Okay. So my biggest critique here, you have a lot of shifting density, and I can't necessarily see a reason for the shifting density. What I mean here is, like, you see how this is like, maybe you subdivided it once, but then this one looks like you subdivided it like 5 times. This is something we want to avoid, because we want uniformity throughout our model, and then especially because if you ever plan on using this in something, this is going to cause you issues performance wise. So you want to keep this stuff as clean and similar as possible, because you have a lot of detail in these other parts where there's not a ton of mesh, but here for whatever reason there's just a lot of mesh going on. So this is something that I would look at trying to reduce, or just at least trying to in the future, making sure that you're having some uniformity. Like, your models are never going to be perfectly uniform across everything, but you just want to make sure you don't have these massive discrepancies when it comes to like the polygon density. So that's something I'd look at there. Otherwise, this is a really cool project. I like that you laid everything out. This kind of presentation can be a little tough. I don't necessarily recommend doing stuff like this, because you're just kind of uploading a picture and hoping they understand what it is, or they tend to look at it long enough to understand what it is. Your normal maps don't really kind of show anything through, so this would be the kind of thing where you'd want to change up your presentation a little bit. Maybe adjust it to where you're rendering these textures and only these textures on the models, so you have your initial breakdowns with your like albedo and all that other stuff. Just to kind of showcase in a format that's a little bit more easy to digest, because I know when I look at these, I tend to just look away. I don't even look at my textures in my folders, because like it stresses me out for whatever reason. So presentation like this, try to avoid this. It does just kind of, it feels like you just dropped a bunch of stuff and then kind of left it. Let's look at this gun. Okay. I really like your scene. I love the lighting. It shows up really well. The wood leaves a little bit to be kind of wanted here. This wood grain doesn't feel, I don't know, it feels weird in the handle. I don't know what's really going on there. Like, the stock of it looks good. Everything else looks phenomenal. I would just be careful with these wood textures. Wood is one of the easiest things to just like instantly give away that something's CG, because it's, whatever reason, it's a harder material to like replicate. So that's kind of the only critique I have there. I really like your scene layout. Your presentation is looking pretty good so far. This looks like it was a low poly asset too. Yeah, you did a really good job texturing the barrel, the different rusted aspects of this. I like the little subtle details you're adding in here, like the bone, the horn, and the beads. Those are really nice things to just throw in that kind of sell the character of the object itself. So really good job there. Yeah, it looks like this is what I would recommend you do on most of your projects. So like something like this. This is a really just nice way to kind of give like an easily digestible preview of like what you did texturing wise on the model, without just taking all your maps and slapping it on the screen. So this is something I would for sure recommend you stick with. It seems to be like you kind of experiment with a different thing. That would be something I'd stick with. All right, let's look at this car. Nice. It's an old Toyota Land Cruiser. Let's see, most ambitious project so far. Okay. The biggest thing here, your tires are feeling a little plasticky. Rubber tends to have a really kind of special property to it, so adding a adding a little bit of roughness to this would help this a little bit more. Otherwise, like, everything else looks really good. Like, it looks like a brand new car, which is, you know, probably what you're going for. Yeah, your geo looks good. This is where you would expect to see density, mesh-wise, on the tires. I don't know if these are... It looks like these are single pieces that are just kind of, like, warped to the surface of that. So, okay. Yeah, no, I mean, everything else looks pretty good. I'm not seeing any issues, like, topology-wise. Overall, like, your stuff's really good. I think just looking at those little different, like, ways of, like, presenting it might help a little bit more. I would probably look at adjusting this and putting this as your top frame. You can use this still as, like, your main, like, thumbnail. But when you open a project, the first thing you want to see is the entire model, and then you want to get into the granular stuff. So that's just a little micro change I would recommend. Overall, you've got a pretty good start to everything. Your texturing is coming along really well. Your presentation is getting there for sure. You've got basically the layout you need to do. You just kind of need to streamline it a bit. But you seem like you're doing a good job. I would start looking at potentially doing something a little bit more complicated again. I know you said this was like your most ambitious project, so it might be time to do something else that's not like a small prop, but you've got some really nice stuff in here. Avoid stuff like this. The single image post. You do want to show as much of a breakdown as possible. Even if it's for a simple prop, show a little bit. Just show some stuff, but your rendering is looking really nice. You've got a pretty good understanding of how to create like different scenarios of lighting and some different like atmospheric sound. So really good job overall, man. This is looking really good. Yeah, it's looking real good. Alrighty. Has anyone else joined chat that wants to get theirs looked at now, or should I just keep going down the list? Give you guys a minute to respond, and I'm going to drink some water because my voice already hurts. That's what's rough about these streams, is like the amount of talking you do. Gotta keep the vocal cords hydrated. What does the list look like? The list is large, but if your portfolio is in here and you are here, I will prioritize it. Since you're actually in the stream. But we probably have, I don't know, 20 of them? Mine is Alex Clark. Okay, let me find it. Hold on. Oh, found you. Cool. Close this one. All right. Let's start with this first one, Dead by Daylight. Damn. All right. So you actually worked on Dead by Daylight. Nice. Okay. I dig that. Again, kind of the same thing I was talking about earlier, if you were here earlier, the black background. Try to avoid the black backgrounds. They do tend to kind of keep your stuff almost hidden in certain aspects, so you don't get to see the full depth of it. Because, like, I can tell there's stuff going on down in here, and it's just a little hard to see. Like, the easiest way to see it is here, so the black is just generally something to avoid a little bit, just because you do want to showcase that actual asset. That's a super cool asset, though. Five Nights at Freddy's. First time hard surface modeling throughout the entirety of the model. Okay, cool. You're actually the first person I've ever seen that actually did a FNAF thing, so that's cool. Nice. The biggest thing that I'm noticing here is that it feels it just feels a bit noisy. I know Five Nights at Freddy's is kind of that stylized, like really grungy horror, but I feel like the texture is almost a little bit too noisy to the point where like you kind of lose the idea of what's going on here, like what shapes are where. His nose kind of disappears into his face just because it's all kind of similar texture wise. So with something like this, try to figure out how you can break the texture up a little bit. You can go, like, you can still have it covered in blood, but try to do it in like a sparing manner to where it doesn't necessarily feel like you're losing the actual visuals. But overall, this is a cool model. I like this. Your presentation is really good. Again, I would just avoid the dark backgrounds. You tend to lose it. This might actually even pop a little bit more if you did like a lighter gray background, just to kind of show the asset a little bit more. But I do feel like it gets lost in the darkness. But overall, super cool. You have a good understanding of like the texturing itself. So let's see. Okay, so these are fan made. I see. Okay, so you did the generator from Dead by Daylight. Nice. Okay. I'd have to look at these because I don't know if the game assets necessarily look like this, but I think the biggest thing that I'm gaining off of most of your work is it's very dark. It's a problem that I suffered with for a long time. Like a lot of my stuff was really dark because like I was just kind of like, I didn't want to like highlight everything. But this is one of those situations where you do kind of want to highlight some of this stuff. Like you want to show the work that you put into this, and like you lose a lot of this detail because it's just so dark. Like otherwise your assets are gorgeous. Like they look great. Your texturing skills are there. Like you definitely know what you're doing. I think just in general, the overall lighting is just a bit dark. And that's kind of a common thing. It looks like you're probably going for like more horror-based game like development jobs, so that's totally understandable. I do think though you just want to showcase your assets a little bit more. Like here's nice. You've got some really nice lighting in here. That's kind of showcasing all the work that you put in here. So it's a good little environment work that you did. Nice. Oh, I love this breakdown. This is really cool. This is really nice. So if you guys are in environment art, this is something that is actually really cool to showcase like where everything was and how it was broken down. That's really nice. Like, unfortunately, like you can't click on these individual assets and look at them, but it's cool to show that like, you know, each asset there was a lot of work put into each one of these. So that's really nice. I like your presentation on this a lot. This is a really nice setup that you have going on here, and I like that everything's pretty visible. It's still following the same theming, and I like that your portfolio actually has like this consistent theming to it. It's something I've personally thought about doing, so I'm curious to look at doing that as well. I like that you've done that already. It looks really good and it shows off really well. Okay. Yeah, I mean overall, like your stuff's really nice. I think you need to either bring in a little bit more light or bring the textures back just a tad bit. Everything else is looking really cool so far. I think those are kind of my major critiques. But you're definitely on the right path. One of the things that stands out here a little bit though, just kind of pay attention to your anatomy when you're looking at stuff like this, because like this is the kind of stuff that will it will trip people up when they look at it. So I know it looks like you were trying to kind of handle it with texture. This is one of those things I don't know if I would necessarily leave it to texture. I mean, I guess if you had a different budget and you had to deal with that, but in this case, for portfolio pieces, if you're going to be working with something that has like anatomy to it, try to make sure you preserve that as best as possible and don't try to hide it with texture. But otherwise, yeah, minus the fact that everything's just kind of really dark and like hard to see, you've got some really good stuff going for so far. I like where you're going with it, and you definitely have like a vibe to your portfolio. I think that's something that a lot of people lose nowadays, is like they just tend to have a bunch of pieces all over the place that don't necessarily kind of perform to like what they're trying to go for career-wise. So it's cool that you're already leaning into that. It's something that is becoming more common advice now. So it's good that you're already doing that. Otherwise, killer work. You're doing really good. I can't wait to see more from you. Next time, just light it up a little bit. Pull your textures back just a tad bit. Don't add too much grunge. Like, find a good medium with the grunge, and I think you'll be good, man. It looks good though. Looks real good. Thank you so much for sending that one in. Let's see. That was Alex. All right. Anime Plus. Mine is Amit Dubey. All right, let me find you. Oh, there you are. And then while I'm doing this one, if anyone else is in chat that already submitted their portfolio, just jump into the Discord, mark it with a green check mark, and I'll check after this one. What's up, Axeman? Yeah, no problem, Chernoise. And again, for all of you guys, if you guys have further questions or you want some further instruction or you want to reach out to some other people in the Discord as well, like, feel free to do that. That's what this space is for. It is for you to kind of grow and learn together. So if you guys ever have any questions after one of these things, please feel free. Okay, so I got an itch. All right, so let's look at yours. So this is Amit's profile. I hope I'm saying your name right. I'm sorry if I'm not. Okay, so we have this medieval knife. Nice. This is a really solid prop so far. I like this. I don't know if that was intentional glare, but it's kind of cool. Okay. Your topology looks solid. Okay. All right, so this image, I would nix that. I would not leave that in there. You can tell you just kind of threw a filter on there, and like it just doesn't really serve you very well. What I would do is I would like to see like your UVs, what your UVs actually look like, and kind of break into like showing that stuff a little bit more, because your textures are looking pretty good. There is a little bit, this is something that's a little nitpicky, but it is something to watch out for. You can kind of see how your texture changes direction here, and this is generally just because like the UV shell is flipped or there's something different there. This is where triplanar blending can help you out, especially if you did this in like Substance Painter. It'll kind of help unify that a little bit and fix that up a tad bit. Take a look at something like that for stuff like this, because when you're working with fabrics, when you have weaves going in different directions, if it's not changing because of a seam in the fabric, you definitely want to make sure that you're trying to keep that as consistent as possible. And it can really trip us up as 3D artists, because when you're throwing your UVs together, you know, you don't necessarily know what direction is what unless you're actually planning them out. So just be careful. But otherwise, this knife is super solid. I really like it. I would just remove that image at the end of your portfolio and then maybe add a UV image if you can. But this is really nice. You got a really good patina on the blade. The edge could probably use a little bit more of a highlight, just because it doesn't, you can't necessarily tell it was sharpened. If we ever look at like a knife, so if I look at, pull up a knife real quick. So if I pull up like a knife that's not black, because black is definitely going to show it. Yeah, so let's look at this one. So you can see how there's a slight change in the actual texture of the edge of the blade. This is something that a lot of people miss out on because they just don't think to add that detail, but there is a grain change in the metal because of the way the metal was sharpened. So that's something you always want to take a look at, especially when you're doing blades, is to have that little subtle change at the edge. Because generally, if you look at a knife, the way the knife is polished, the outer polish is always going to be different than the final edge on the actual cutting portion of the knife, because that final edge is run down a grinding stone, and so that's going to follow that pattern versus the pattern of whatever buffer was used to buff the entire knife. But otherwise, it's a really solid knife. Not too many critiques with that at all. Let's look at your wrench. Okay. Nice. This is looking solid. So, no. I was gonna nitpick that, but that actually looks like just kind of like a weld almost. A little bit heavy with the kind of the dust. I would probably pull something like that back a little bit, just because it does highlight, but the problem is it looks like it was placed there. When you're working with things like dust, especially like up here, like where you did it really well, you want to make sure that the dust isn't necessarily like sticking out to people, because dust gathers in different ways on different surfaces, and so we want to make sure that when we're working on that, we're actually mirroring that as best as we can. And from the front view, it looks pretty good, but when you start kind of looking at it and like turning it, you can tell that this dust is just kind of like highlighting instead of like actually serving where it would be building up, where like, you know, it'd be building up inside that little D right there, or along the like the inner portions of this. It wouldn't necessarily be framing the text, but otherwise pretty good. Like the last portfolio, I don't necessarily recommend showcasing your textures like this. It just tends to feel a little kind of like thrown in there. It's better to showcase like your model in like kind of like sliced steps. Do I still have Alex up? Yeah. Or no, it wasn't Alex, it was the other one. Although Alex had that one. I'm going to use you as an example real quick. So we'll scroll down here. So this kind of way of showing your texturing on your assets is really nice. I would recommend doing something like this if you do choose to show off your textures like that. It seems like it's kind of a personal choice if people want to show off their textures this way, but if you do something like this, that kind of has the asset in view so they can kind of understand where the breakdown is, or if you want to just apply these materials to the asset and then just, you know, do the paint overs with it and everything like that, you can totally do that, but just try to avoid dumping your textures like this because it doesn't necessarily bode well. And this looks like an older piece of work, but you've got some really good texturing skills so far. You seem to have gotten better over each project, and that's all anyone could ask for, so that's really nice. Definitely one of your like older models, so I'm not going to critique this too hard just because I can tell your skills have changed a lot, but I like that you have spent some time to set up a scene instead of just showing an asset. That's one of the things that kind of helps sell people apart from others, is they spent the time to showcase their work instead of just rendering it out and throwing it out on the internet. That's a really important thing to do. So it's really cool that you did that with this one, and that's something you should for sure continue. Same problem though, avoid the dark backgrounds. We don't want to lose the assets in the background. But otherwise, your portfolio is coming along. This knife is for sure, like, these two are your strongest pieces so far. I would say now it's time to, you know, move up a little bit, try something a little bit more out of your comfort zone. But you've got a great start so far. I don't have a ton of critiques for you. I would continue, again, setting up your scenes a little bit like that. It's just a nice thing to do. It's something that I try to do myself, and you don't have to go ham with it. Like, you don't have to go crazy. Simple, just throw a couple little props in there and then maybe some sort of backdrop, even a wooden table or something, just to kind of help frame and showcase the object itself. But otherwise, no, killer job so far. I'm excited to see what you do. Thank you so much for sending that one in. All right, so let's close that. I'm gonna leave your profile open. What's up, Axemen? How are you? Okay, is there anyone else in chat that submitted their portfolio that is here so I can make sure I make theirs priority? Give you guys a couple minutes to answer real quick. And while we do that, let me check something real quick here. Okay. Beautiful. Is that an advertisement dip? That's weird. Okay. All right, since nobody's answering, I'm going to go back up to the top of the list. And we're going to take a look at Durga Prasad. Yeah, Durga Prasad. Okay, let's look at your actual portfolio and not just the piece. Okay, cool. So, you have a mixture here. Okay, so you do a little bit of sculpting and a little bit of hard surface. You kind of have a good mix here. Okay, So let's look at your Lambo. This is the one that you submitted as like the first one. So overall, looks really nice. Okay. So when you're doing stuff like this, I would try to refrain from doing stuff like this because the camera kind of zooming in and zooming out and kind of like flying all over the screen, it's not only a little bit disorienting, but it doesn't really help people actually kind of take in the model. So you're doing yourself a disservice by doing this. So if you're looking to add animation to your portfolio in some way, do some scenic driving. You can easily do some like driving scenarios, or just do rotations. Something that's a little bit calmer to look at, because it's too hard to see what's going on here. Like, you can't actually establish like the detail and everything like that. I can't tell what's a texture, what's modeled. So be careful with stuff like this, because this can be off-putting. Okay, so what's up, Kalua? How are you? That's a question, Chase. I don't really know how to answer that. Okay, so right off the bat, the paint looks very speckled, and I can't tell. This looks like it was probably render noise. It more than likely was render noise. So when it comes to your portfolio, when you're putting stuff in your portfolio, you want to avoid this. You don't want to show stuff like this, because it doesn't, again, it helps kind of like lower the quality. You want to show those crisp lines, you want to show the crisp details, you want to render out everything that you work so hard on, and you want to have that paint shine through. And so with the fireflies that we're getting over here, we're getting a lot of noise in the taillights, a lot of noise in the paint, and you can't tell if this is like paint fleck or actual like just render noise. This is stuff to be wary of. So when it comes to portfolio renders, spend the time to allow them to finish. I know sometimes you guys have lower end machines, or you maybe just don't have the time to like set up a render and like watch it, but find the time to just set up renders, and maybe you're going running errands or something like that. Like, do that. I get that it can be hard to leave your PC rendering all the time, because like you need to be using it. Find the times that you're not using it to make sure that your renders that you're putting in your portfolio represent the total quality of work that you're doing, because stuff like this doesn't really help sell the quality of the work, because you can't necessarily make out what was done, and it almost makes it look like there's issues with the texture, when the reality is like it's just render noise. So it's just something to be careful with. Overall, the model looks really nice. Your silhouette looks really good. I'm not seeing any issues with like topology like causing bumps or anything. Your topo actually looks really clean. So the biggest critique here is just going to be look at your render settings and try to really refine those. And then avoid these fast moving animations, because these are rough. These won't help you much. Do some push-up as it renders. Yeah, there you go. Get some fitness in while it renders. That'd probably way less if I did that. That's a good idea. Maybe I should start doing that. Instead of going to the gym, I'll just work out while I'm rendering. But no, overall, like, this is a really nice model. It looks really good. My music stopped. Why did my music stop? Let's see. Pull that back up. Okay, cool. All right. Just be really careful with your renders, because like you're trying to sell your best work possible here, and it shows that you didn't spend the time to like let your renders finish, or you didn't understand the render settings. So like if it comes down to like you don't understand something, try not to put that in your portfolio. Make sure you leave that out until you figure it out and you can put it in. Okay, so let's look at Bernie. Let's see here. This is a cool little model. I like hard surface character work. I actually enjoy doing that, even though I'm not a character artist. I think hard surface character work's fun. Ooh, okay. So, he is way too dense. He's definitely way too dense. Hello, I just joined the stream. Is this AI powered Maya? No, it's just regular Maya. We're also doing portfolio reviews. Okay, so density wise, your topology is way too dense here. It's almost like you're losing the model in the wireframe, and that should never be the case, especially when you're trying to show off the wireframe. So the general rule with wireframes is if you're going to render it out for your portfolio, try to keep it at the lowest level that you can to where you're still maintaining the shape. This is overkill. So you honestly, you subdivided it too much, and you don't want to do that. You want to be able to showcase and say, like, you know, you put a lot of work into this, so like why would you let the wireframe kind of like hide it? Your UV looks solid, everything else looks really good. I like that you're including your reference images as well. Texturing's looking pretty okay on this one. I'd be careful with your normal and your height maps because they're looking a little bit like kind of wall plaster. So these are the kind of details that he's made out of plastic or metal. So they'd be a lot more subtle. They wouldn't be as dented in or dented out, like pulled out. When you're talking about like how kind of like crusty looking it is, that's the kind of level that if this was metal, it would be rusted metal. Like you'd have that degradation on rust. You wouldn't necessarily have that on this like clean sort of like in-use, in-service robot. You'd want to just tone that back a bit. Let's see. Hey Matt, how's it going? Just joined in. I have a Vimeo link if that's okay. Yeah, just drop it in the portfolio reviews and I can take a look at that. That's not a big deal. Because you can't send the links on YouTube's chat. They'll block them. Okay, so the other thing that I do want to just mention here is you have a lot of stuff going on here, but there isn't a lot of like, there isn't much consistency. So you do have these like base characters, you have some of these creature sculpts, you have a little bit of hair work, and so there's kind of a lot going on here instead of showing like there's an area of focus. So if there isn't an area of focus and you want to be a generalist, make sure you're pretty open about like that's what you're going to do, and then organize your portfolio to kind of reflect that. One of the big things you'll see people doing now is they can create the little subcategories up at the top of their portfolio for like sculpting and hard surface modeling and hair sims or animation, anything like that. That's something I recommend, because when you open this up, it looks like you just took a bunch of projects that you made and threw them in there, instead of having some sort of clean, organized variation that you can send people and be like, this is my hard surface work, or this is my creature and character sculpt work. Try to focus on organizing this a little bit and cleaning it up. But otherwise, you're showing a good progression of work, and you have a couple of issues here and there, but everything else is looking pretty good. This is a pretty solid looking model. One thing with this though, you can kind of tell that it was just like a base texture that was thrown on it. So be careful with, especially with guns. Like there's a lot of detail that you can put on guns, and there's areas where the detail was just kind of missed. So these dials are generally kind of plastic, and instead it's just kind of looking like a gloss material was applied to it. So trying to find different variations in roughness that will help sell the different sort of finishes on these parts, because guns are made up of so many different parts. Like there's so many different pieces, and so getting those finishes correct can sometimes be difficult, but it's something you definitely want to make sure you focus on, because overall, like, the asset looks good, but if you had your finishes set up here to where like you could tell this was more plastic than metal, but right now everything is just kind of blending together. And so we want to avoid this like blending together look, because it doesn't really kind of serve the model itself, which it could be a great model, but if your textures all look the same, then you lose a lot of that detail. But otherwise, like, you've got a good start. I would mainly focus on kind of fixing some of your issues with textures, taking a look at your render settings, and then also just kind of cleaning up the portfolio. Like, this is unfortunately just kind of very messy, and so you want to have this a little bit more refined. All right. Well, thank you so much for sending that one in, Durga. I appreciate it. If you have questions, please ask in the Discord. I don't mind. I'm going to go ahead and close that one. We'll get rid of that one. Some of these I know are older ones, guys, so we're just kind of going through the list as such, but we're actually catching up pretty quick, so that's good. Let's take a look. I'm going to do some of the newer ones today as well. Let's take a look here. Mano, is that the one that you just submitted? Mano? Okay, perfect. Perfect. Let's take a look at yours then, since you're actually here. Before I play this, I just got to mute it because otherwise, if there's music, YouTube will demonetize me. Okay, let's see. I don't get demo reels very often, so it's cool to get one. And should be responsible for all aspects of the expectation of life. Ooh, that's cool. Nice. So, right off the bat, okay, so with something like this, super cool. I love that thing. Not really sure what it is, but I love the simulation around it. I like that it feels like it's alive. You have these little offshoots going all over the place. The problem here is that it goes on for so long, and not at any point do you kind of break down the sort of construction of this thing. So a lot of the times with like TD reels like this, you'll see how they break down the different particle systems that were involved, how they break down the different fluid systems that were involved. They show like viewport, any number of things that they show. I'm not an FX artist, so I don't really necessarily know how to like break these down. But seeing a little bit of information on how you did this, even if you like add some frames at the bottom to kind of like show the breakdowns, would kind of help this a little bit more, because right now you're just kind of watching this wondering like when's the next piece come up. It's a super cool sim. I really love that. I'd love to see how you did that, because Houdini is a mystery to me, and I'm assuming you did that with Houdini. But that's super cool. It would be cool to see like the breakdown either like off frame here or down at the bottom, or if you even want to like break off and just show the breakdowns in their own frames. Just kind of a better way to showcase the actual work that you put in. Convergence. Okay. So this one's cool. My issue here is I feel like I'm losing all of the sim. I feel like all of this work that you did out here is getting lost because the background is so monotone color the same way. So with your other one, you have this pretty stark contrast between the background and the foreground, which is, your subject. But here I feel like we're losing a lot of that. So I like the center of this thing. It's really cool. I do just feel like we're losing a lot of that. And again, the same kind of critique, like show your breakdowns, show your process, show that you have a good understanding of the technical side of it. It's going to really help to just kind of sell yourself as a technical artist like this, especially because like this stuff is difficult to do. So like to be able to show your breakdowns and show you understand what you're doing, that's going to help you so much more. And then with something like this, I would just try to find a way to make the main subject stand out a little bit more, because it feels like it's getting lost. I think there's one more in here. Yeah, the druid. Work in progress, responsible for feather lighting. Okay. Okay. Let's pause that. Okay, so work in progress stuff. It's generally okay to include in portfolios. As a sanctioned like demo reel, I would not necessarily include this in a demo reel, because it's a work in progress and because it's so like it's in its early stages. I wouldn't necessarily put this in something that you're sending to people. I know you say that your reel is work in progress, so that's probably the case here. But just be careful with work in progress stuff when it comes to reels, because in a portfolio you can always update that portfolio, but with a reel you got to re-edit the reel, re-upload it. God knows how many people you sent the reel to who then you need to send a new link to, so you just want to be careful with that. Overall, the same kind of issue here is that like everything just feels like it's bleeding into everything else, and so there's really no way to tell what's technically going on here. I can see that there's, you know, fur applied to the face, and I think these are supposed to be feathers, but the problem is like everything is so dark and just kind of like mashed together, it's getting lost. And that's the last thing you want to do is you don't want your work to get lost into the background and lost into the frame, because you put a lot of work into this, and so that's the last thing you want to do. It's a little bit easier to see here what's going on, but this is the perfect example for like you're working on something and you want to start showing the breakdown of the feather system. Like, is there some sort of like riggable control to the feathers or the fur? Like, what do you have set up in the scene? Like, just how can you break this down and showcase your process and your work is going to be the best way to do that. But otherwise, you've got some really cool like technical stuff going on here. Like, I really love this shot. Like, this is really cool. This I feel like is definitely your most solid piece in this reel, because it's very visible, it's color graded really nicely, it's got a lot of character to it. You don't know what's going on necessarily, but like it's changing shape so many different times. Like, there's periods where I'm like, oh, it's a skull, oh, it's a bird, you know, like you don't know what it is, so it keeps you guessing. So really cool sim, really awesome composition. It's just the other stuff in your portfolio seems to get just kind of lost because of the composition. So that's something to look out for. It looks like you're doing some really cool sim stuff. I'd really be curious to see how you break this stuff down, especially because like I don't know anything about Houdini, so what Houdini does is just a complete mystery to me. So, but overall, really cool job. I would definitely make sure you're keeping this as like a work in progress reel. I wouldn't necessarily be using it to apply just yet. I would start looking at how you can add more projects in here and then kind of work towards the same quality with the composition that you have with this one, because you did a really good job with this one. What's up, Crics? How are you? But yeah, no, overall really cool. I'm glad that you were the first person to ever submit a reel, so that's really cool. I'd love to see what you do next, man. That's super awesome. I don't know many Houdini FX artists, so that's really nice. But killer job so far. Go ahead and delete that one. All right, do we have anyone else in chat currently who has submitted a portfolio who wants me to look at? Yeah, for sure. We'll do a couple of breakdowns to that. Thank you. I'm not a huge fan of breakdowns, but I feel necessary working on conventional explosives. Yeah, they're not fun. Like, I don't like doing my breakdowns either. And, you know, eventually when you get your first job and you kind of get into the industry and you start kind of working and doing more, you get more kind of leniency in not doing them. But as starting out, especially if you're just trying to break into the industry, that's the stuff you want to show, because you want to show that technical understanding. All right, anybody else in chat who is here right now who has not had their portfolio looked at just yet, who has submitted it? I submitted Nick64. Okay, let me see. Ouch. Which one? Nick64, Nick64. Where are you at? When did you submit it, Nick? Oh, there it is. Yep, found you. I didn't scroll far enough. There we go. Okay, cool. All right. Yeah, Manahar. I hope I'm saying your name right. Thank you for submitting that. That's really cool. I'd love to see more stuff from you, because I don't see a lot of FX stuff like that. All right, Nick. Let's take a look at what you got here. We're gonna look at your most recent piece. Starting off with the video. That's always cool. Okay, so this was the think tank thing. Is this an entire demo reel, or is this just one? Okay. Okay, so starting off, let's just take a look at this real quick. Let me go back out to the exterior. Okay, so one of the things that stands out to me the most right now is the lighting is very harsh. Um, it's almost like hiding a lot of this stuff. So it's like you've kind of got like a spotlight over everything, and you're just kind of shining it down. The lighting definitely needs to be kind of toned back a little bit. You can kind of play with this and be free to do things that don't necessarily mimic reality to make sure the lighting looks like it was curated. The interior of this thing is actually looking really solid lighting wise. Again, just coming from the inside, it's a little harsh, but otherwise, like, the interior lighting is actually playing really well. It's just a tad bit harsh. But the exterior lighting, it just feels really flat. And so I would start looking at how to improve the outside lighting, how to kind of pull in some of this detail that you're losing. Because, like, you've got these really great, like, shadows that are pushing through the trees and everything like that. But the problem is that they're so dark and they're so dense that you're losing so much stuff here. So it just feels like you have kind of like one large light instead of a bunch of like kind of structured lights to give you the look that you're looking for. And this is a common thing, especially with environments, because it can be kind of hard to think about how you're going to replicate the sun without just throwing an environment light in there and calling it good. But in this case, I would definitely go back and try to look at this and try to tone the harshness down a little bit. Otherwise, it's a really neat project. I think just the lighting needs some work. It plays like a low poly asset, like a video game asset. I think just the lighting and rendering needs a little bit of work. You've got some really nice atmosphere to it, though. The God rays coming through, like, that's always a nice thing to see. But other than that, it's kind of just open. So this would be one of those things to start looking at, like playing with some light fog, some atmospheric elements to make this feel a little bit more alive, because everything just feels so like kind of flat. And then the plants themselves, take a look at trying to either update these textures or use different plants, just because the ones that are in the scene right now, they feel very 3D. And so we want to try to avoid that, especially with environment work, because like you're trying to make this feel like it was a naturally existing place. And so you have some of that detail with these rocks, even though I think these are being handled by like a height map, but you lose that illusion when you have these kind of like plasticky looking plants. So just overall, the scene needs a little bit of work, lighting wise, and then maybe some texturing stuff to take a look at. I'm not an environment artist, so take my advice with a grain of salt, but the things that stand out to me the most are the lighting and some of the texturing. The interior of this is really nice and degraded. I like how you've kind of grunged this up. You've got the ivy growing through. Like, everything inside of the train feels very purposeful and like it exists there. And then outside the train, it just kind of feels like it was like slapped there. So try to make sure you just you bring out that consistency in your scene. Let's see. Let's like look at this one. Okay, cool. So this is like a sci-fi scene. All right. Okay, so here's your original concept. Okay, so let's look at this. This is actually really good. I like that you showed your concept. So you definitely tried to mimic some of this, which is awesome. But it's like you put the effort into like doing the grunge on the walls, and then you gave up on the floor. So this scene, like this concept art, feels very like lived in and worn, and it's been around. And so when we're working with concept art like this, we want to carry that information over however we can. So whether it's kind of degrading the chair, or you can tell that this chair is like slightly bent, it's been used, it's been sat in, it's been worn, there's grunge everywhere. And so this is one of those cases where like going back through and taking a look at the way you did your texturing and just adding grunge where there would be grunge, because like with floors, there's going to be grunge all over the place. Like, floors are filthy, they're dirty. So to have like these really dirty, worn walls, and then this really clean floor and clean desk and all this stuff, like you kind of lose the structure of the scene. So that's definitely something I would take a look at. When you have reference like this, definitely always try to mirror that reference as best as possible, especially like color and tone wise, because like the beautiful thing about working off of concept art like this is it sets it for you. It sets the scene for you. It sets the lighting for you. It sets everything for you, and then you can go back and change things however you want to later on if you want to do like more stylistic renders. But because it sets that for you, when you compare your work versus the concept art, you start to show the holes really quickly. And so it's awesome to do this, but you need to make sure that you made every attempt possible to kind of mimic and recreate what the original artist did to showcase, like, yes, I knew how to follow the template and fix it and build everything out in a way that made it feel naturally realistic, because they're two different mediums. So they're obviously going to look very different, but there's similarities that get carried over with each piece. And so making sure that you're carrying those similarities over and you're actually spending the time and focusing on like where would dirt be building up, where would dents and scratches start happening and building up. So it's just stuff to be mindful of, especially if you're going to compare your work to the original concept work. You want to make sure that the way that you're doing it is still showcasing that you've followed the original template. It's almost like you're halfway there, right? So like half of this is good and like ready to go, and then the other half is like it still has like its basic materials and it's in limbo. So definitely take a look at something like that. Just pay attention to like how you're doing things. Otherwise, there's some like nitpicky like mesh issues down here. Like these panels are not squared off. You definitely have some sort of pinch going on here. So just paying attention to these little details. Like if this is a detail you don't want to model in, make sure you're handling it with like a normal map or something. But otherwise, like you have a really good start here. I would definitely push this piece and try to finish this, because this can be a really cool like lived-in piece if you just kind of finish up the bottom half of it. Let's look at this one. Okay, so this is like a grungy kind of like rocker bathroom type deal. Okay. I like that you're putting in the effort to set your scenes up. You're adding these little details like the crushed paper towels and the beer bottles. Like all of this stuff helps play to sell the scene, which is always good. Where things kind of fall apart, you want to make sure that if you're rendering things out and you have stuff like this, always try to correct that. Because if you look at like trim in real life on the bottom of like a floor, that's always going to be kind of an issue. But just try to make sure you're paying attention to like how your objects line up and everything like that. The lighting is midday for a train. I'll also find time to play with lighting at night and golden hour. I'll take a look at the plants. No, yeah, for sure. Like these are all things that you don't have to do, but they're totally options if you want to. I'm just trying to give you like the best info that I can. This seems like it was an older project for you, so I'm not really gonna like live on this one, but kind of the same thing. Like if you're going off a concept art, try to match everything as best as you can. This is definitely a rough one to deal with, because like you have so many different like color scenarios and lighting scenarios that like this would be a rough one to recreate. But make sure you're adding this like dirt and grunge and the chips to the tiles and stuff, and not playing it safe with the textures. And then when you have things like pipes going through walls or there's connection points, make sure you're adding the gaskets that those connect to, or holes in the wall to just show that like this is a dive bar or whatever, and their bathroom is like horribly put together, and you know there's holes in the walls and stuff like that. Just making sure you're adding those little details, because those little details are what help these things feel like they're lived in, that they exist in the real world, and that they're actual physical places. So just kind of the same critiques there. Let's look at this hard surface asset. So this is pretty cool. It's like a little satellite. Okay. Yeah, I like this a lot. It looks like you were kind of pushing your texturing skills here, which is awesome. I like the kind of breakup of color that you've got going on here. The biggest thing that I notice here is, give me a second. The biggest thing I notice here is your height map, or your normal map, is really intense. So it's the same kind of like intensity issue that you've got going on. So being that this is like a satellite, you have these streaks that look like dirt, So if that's supposed to be like an impact, that's totally fine. I would definitely make sure that you're trying to sell that impact. So like there was a point where this thing like smashed into the ground and it really grunged up this one area, and then the sand kind of pushed it all off. But otherwise, like this looks like you're starting to like push your textures and try to play with this. Dirt like this, it can be really tough adding like dirt and like grunge, because if you're not careful with your coloring, it'll look like you just painted it on. So I always recommend with stuff like this, like especially if you're in Substance Painter, use flow to your advantage. So take your flow, turn it all the way down, or turn it as far down as you can, and then just lightly brush it. Really play with the idea that, you know, the sand and the dirt and the dust, it builds up in grooves and stuff like that. It's not necessarily going to be like plastered all over the thing. If it was mud, yeah, it'd be like dripping off of it and plastered on it. But like sand and like dust like this, you want to make sure it's like it's just building up in crannies and stuff like that. Because if you ever look at like old space equipment, so let's see, see if I can find an example. Oh wait, oh no, I gotta we'll look at the Atlantis. Yeah, this is a perfect example. So if you ever get to go to like, I think this one's in DC. This is a really cool way to look at like the way stuff that goes into space develops texture. So you can see like the different sort of grunge that happens from re-entry and like the different dust buildup and all that stuff. Like this is some of the best ways to look at stuff for space reference, is to look at like museums where they have things that actually went to space and try to build your textures off of that, because it's going to really help you sell that instead of looking like it was just painted on there. But otherwise, this is a really cool asset. You have a really good like start, and I think you're on the way. I think just kind of taking that stuff to that extra mile and really spending that time and kind of playing with the lighting a little bit more is going to really help you sell things. My instructor mentioned the same thing about the trim and the piping. Yeah, it's just something to keep in mind. You don't want stuff dead stopping like that, because in reality, it doesn't usually dead stop like that. If it does dead stop, like I have a good example, like down here, my trim on my floor is not finished because I pulled it up to put wire down. It dead stops, but it's like the trim is also degraded on the edge because it's been kicked, it's been rubbed, there's wall underneath it, and you don't just necessarily want it to stop and then have just clean tile underneath it. So if it stops, degrade the edge, damage it a little bit, and then just find ways to make sure everything feels like it actually belongs there and it doesn't feel 3D and it doesn't feel like stuff is just kind of like pinning through things. The drone asset was from school. This was mainly focusing on texturing. I was very happy about how it came out. I got a story for this. No, that's good. That's awesome. And you know, you're still working on it and you're still learning, and that's totally good. This is awesome for just being in school. Just giving you just some ideas on how you can kind of take it up a next notch. You did a really good job at like focusing on how this thing would degrade. It's just now at this point you want to look at like how it would physically be gathering this like dust and grunge and stuff. But otherwise, like you're playing with all the concepts that you need to be playing with in regards to damaging this thing and degrading the actual texture of it. And it looks really solid. So you're off to a really good start. But yeah, no, good job, man. I'm excited to see what you do. Thanks a lot for sending in your portfolio for review. If you have questions, just hit me up in Discord. I do not mind. Let me go ahead and delete that one now that we're done with that one. All right. So I think what I'm going to do... What time is it? Hey, Crics, are you still in here? I see your portfolio. If you're still in here, you're next. I mean, you're going to be next anyway, more than likely, but... I went to NASA's Visitor Center a few years back. Was a really cool experience. Highly recommend it if you can. Not in the summer. No, not in the summer. That place is miserable during the summer, but that is a really cool... It's a cool trip. Yeah, if you ever get a chance to go look at, like, old military stuff or old space travel stuff, like, it's always really cool. And, like, as 3D artists, it's one of the best ways to just go and look at how, like, things are built and how texture works and how, like, stuff degrades over time and builds up. It's honestly, like, it's one of my favorite ways to kind of explore the world, is just to look at how texture builds up over time, because that's all it is. I don't know if Crics is still here, but we're going to go ahead and do Crics portfolio because I know he was in here. All right, Crics. Or Krish. Is it Krish or Crics? All right, let's look at your weapons. Okay. Nice. So I like the silhouette of this thing. It's looking really cool. Was it low poly? Yeah, low poly asset, so that makes sense. Okay, so texturing. The texturing feels very safe. It looks like you were going for kind of like a stylized weapon, so that does make sense. Let me pull up an example here real quick. Laser rifle. See if I can find something that I can kind of work off of here. That looks like a pretty good example for the most part. So you can see how they kind of played with the clean textures, but they also still have like that kind of degree of separation. And if we look at let me close that one. If we look at yours, everything's very similar. And so it would be cool to kind of go back through here and kind of figure out how to separate some of these materials a little bit. Because you could play with this in ways that kind of allow you to like separate the barrel from the body, have the body be this nice yellow. But otherwise, like texture-wise, it's feeling a little bit like stamped. Is the best word I can think of for it. It's like it feels like the texture was just stamped on there. So this is definitely something that I would probably take a look at and try to figure out how to adjust your grunge a little bit. Because you have so much of it, it almost looks like the gun's made out of porcelain. You have all these weird fractures and chips and stuff. Whereas in reality, when you look at guns, like the way they kind of wear and get damaged over time is like little corner chips here and there, and you know, the occasional scratch across the body of it. So be careful with these like super highly dense cracks and breaks, because it looks like it's basically just like peeled off instead of being scraped off. The roughness channels too, like it's kind of hard to tell like what's what here. Like, is this metal? Is this plastic? Is this rubber? Is this supposed to be rubber? What is this supposed to be? There's not a lot of separation of material type here, so it's kind of confusing to look at and be like, well, what is what? So I would definitely focus on trying to make sure that when you're building your materials that you're separating things the way they should be separated in real life. Because if you ever look at like any sort of like firearm or anything like that, you can generally tell what's rubber, what's plastic, what's steel, what's chromed. So that's something that's really important to look at. Otherwise, like, I really love the silhouette of this rifle. I like how thin it is. It's kind of like a cool, it reminds me of a Nerf gun. But there's a lot that's kind of confusing about this visually that I would probably take a look at and see if you can just kind of like take it up a notch. Let's see. Okay, so we have a dagger. So these are some cool like low poly assets that you did. Okay. So cool little like prop dump. That's fun. Stuff like this. So pay attention to this, because you have this really low poly blade, but then you have this really high poly handle. And so like this stuff, like especially if you're talking about game assets, like you don't want to have this much inconsistency. You want to have as little inconsistency mesh density wise as possible. So you want as much of a consistent like kind of fold across it. So if there's a detail in here that's causing you to have this much density in mesh, remove that detail and add it with a texture. But that's definitely a little too dense, so be careful with stuff like that. But otherwise, it's a cool little kind of prop presentation. Be careful again with these dark backgrounds, because this lantern, you can barely make it out. You almost can't even tell like there's a frame or there's a background. So be careful with the dark backgrounds. They tend to kind of like, you lose your assets in the back. I like the stylization you have going on here, so that's cool. The blades feel a little bit like marble, so I don't know if that was the goal there, but I like the stylized look to them. Like everything's kind of flowing together really well. Just pay attention to your density in certain places. Even on this blade, like you could reduce some of this. But yeah, no, I mean that's a good little weapon drop. Let's see. Let's look at this guy. My instructor noticed my struggle with the statue and helped me understand texturing in his workflow. When I got to the drone, I applied that workflow to it, and bam, cool drone. Nice, very cool. Well, that's good. I mean, and you're learning, and you're willing to learn, and that's the most important part. Definitely the most important part. Okay, so this reminds me of the scanner from Alien. Okay. So this is one of those areas where kind of paying attention to presentation can help you out a lot. This screen would have some sort of glow to it, and like the green kind of sells it as a screen, but you'd want to make sure that this material has some sort of emission to it to kind of help just further push that and further sell that a little bit. You're still working with low poly assets, but you can still add these lighting effects to kind of make sure that you're telling people, like, you know, these are lights, this is a display, like it's illuminating something. It kind of almost makes the model feel a little too flat because the illumination isn't there. Oh, there you are, Crics. Yeah, so I'm just talking about your scanner right now. I already did 2 of your other models, but you can watch the recap if you need to. Yeah, just overall, it just, the lighting feels kind of flat. Again, you can really push this texture, add some emission to it, and really kind of brighten the scene up. And then just being careful with the density of your, or like the what do you call it? The power of your normals, because you get these really kind of like bumpy edges, and they almost look unnatural. So you just want to be really careful with like how much power you're putting behind those texture maps, because especially when you're working with like low poly, if you put too much power behind it, it ends up looking like you're framing the object instead of it being like natural damage. So you just got to be careful there. Hey Gotham, no, you're actually totally fine. I'm gonna do yours next if you want to hang around. Your presentation's good here though. You're doing the same thing that you should be doing, is just making sure that you're actually showcasing like the stuff that you're rendering out. I've switched to Blender for lighting because Maya was crashing a lot. This one was done in Maya. Oh, okay, I got you. I got you. Yeah, I like where you're going. I think one of the biggest things that I would like to see you start doing is looking at how to add a little bit more depth to your shapes. Your shapes are very flat right now. They're very flat and sharp. And so adding some different qualities to these, because like if we look at, let's go here, pull up oh, no, that's not what I wanted. If we go sniper rifle, let's look at see if we can find a low poly one real quick. That's just a solid image. Let's see. Is this low poly or is this plasticity? It's always so hard to find out if stuff is like low poly or not. But look at the way the shapes work on these. Like, so stuff like this, like guns are very weird. They're slightly organic to their shape. So stuff is still hard surface, but they're slightly organic in the way they like flow into curves and stuff like that. So pay attention to the way like shaping works and try to avoid these like harsh cuts that you got going on, because these harsh, sharp shapes are always what kind of lead people to realize like, oh, that's 3D, that's fake. And so that's one of the best ways that we can look at this and just say like, add a little bit of differentiation between the different textures and the different shapes, and just kind of play with that a little bit more. But otherwise, like, you're doing great. You got some really cool stuff. Your stuff is getting progressively better as you go, so that's always what we're looking for. So good job so far, man. Bit of smoothing and hard and bevels to avoid hard edges. Exactly. Yeah, we always want to avoid hard edges because we don't generally have hard edges in real life. So I'm out of here. Happy I went on this journey for 3D art. I can guarantee you that if you asked me 2 years ago, I could say any of this, I'd say no. Very proud of myself, and I plan seeing and I'll throw the weapons in Discord. Awesome, Kalua. Good job. I'm excited to see what you're doing. If you have any questions, just hit me up. Don't worry about it. But I'm excited to see what you do. Yeah, Crics. No, good job, man. It's looking good. It's looking real good. Just got to get some work on that other stuff. Let me close all this stuff. Okay. Gautham, let's go ahead and do yours since you're here now. I realize I probably went live a little bit earlier for most of you guys because I know it's like morning where some of you live. Thank you so much for taking the time. Yeah, absolutely, Crics. No problem at all. And again, since we're kind of like midway through stream, if you guys ever want to post your work in the work in progress section, if you want critiques or anything like that, we have the project critiques section. You can get some live critiques on your work so you can try to figure out how to best finish something. So that option is open for all of you if you want to. That's what the Discord is for. And so, you know, utilize that. That's what it's there for. All right, let's look at Gautham. Since you're here. All right, so let's look at your first one here. Yeah, no problem, Crics. I know it's early for you. Have a good breakfast. I think the works of mine is already seen by you. Probably. I don't know if we've done a review on stream. Have we done a review on stream? Did you do the last one? I don't think I remember seeing. I don't remember reviewing yours last time. But let's do it. Let's go ahead and go through it. So, right off the bat here, it's the same issue that we had with another one tonight. Pay attention to your samples when you're rendering. That's why you're getting these grainy renders, is because your samples are too low or there's not enough light in your scene. You want to really make sure you're paying attention to when you're rendering these out that you're getting the highest quality possible for like what you can deal with. So we don't want to see this much grain because this is kind of what just shows that you didn't spend a lot of time on your render. Otherwise, like the shape of the pistol is cool. It's a little square. So this is one of those things, like if you look at old pirate pistols, they're always very kind of organic and hand carved because it's, you know, they were made by hand. So try to pay attention and don't be afraid to get weird with your shapes. You know, it's okay to play it safe, but in some cases you played it a little too safe with the shape on this one. So just, you know, in the future, feel free to like add some organic like shape to this. Because if you look at like an old pirate pistol, you can see how like kind of organic and flowy they are. Like this one. This is a really good example. So it's like almost spherical, then it goes into like a cylinder, and it just kind of flows naturally. You only really tend to get the squared kind of fronts when you get to these like high, like large barreled ones. So just be careful with stuff like that. Try to add a little bit more character to it when you're modeling this stuff, because especially with the grip, like think about it as like if you were carrying this around, you wouldn't want to hold that grip because it'd be uncomfortable. So just be a little careful with your shaping. And then texturing wise, you've got a really nice wood grain here, but it's weird because it's like almost blurred. And I don't know if it's just because of render settings, but you've got the really nice wood grain. The metal looks good. You've got some nice edge wear around the bell of the barrel. This is where I would probably start taking a look, though, is like you've got these pins. This is, for some reason, has a wood texture on it. Probably shouldn't be wood. But your presentation's good. Like, you've got all the stuff necessary to, like, present your work and show all this stuff. I like that you've got the marmoset viewer. I'm struggling at texturing to realistic. Okay, that's fair. It's a hard thing to do, and it's a hard thing to kind of work out. It's something I'm working on a video on for people, so if that's something you're waiting for, it's coming. It takes a while to build a video on that. But you're on the right path. I would definitely take a look at. You can tell that your resolution's a little low, so that's why you're getting this like pixelation. That's probably also why this is looking blurry. If you have a low resolution texture, your textures are going to either blur or pixelate, and so you want to try to find the best resolution that makes the asset look good, but also doesn't like crash whatever you're trying to do. So this is a pretty good first solid attempt at like realistic texturing. You did a really good job on the barrel. I don't know if this was a smart material that you edited or if it was just a smart material, but start looking into how to build your own materials and how to kind of layer things. It's definitely a hard skill to develop, so it's not something I like immediately expect people just to like pick up on. It takes time to understand and grow with it, but it looks like you have a good understanding of like presentation, and you have a decently solid understanding of modeling. So the next thing for you is definitely to start looking at texturing and just trying to figure out how to push your textures a little bit further. And if that's something you have questions on in the Discord, feel free to ask. Let's see. Look at this other asset. This is actually really nice. I like this horn. So the model looks good. I'm using 2K, but for more detailing, I want to go 4K or 8K. VRAM does not support that. No, so if your VRAM doesn't support it, you're going to want to switch to CPU rendering. But you can squeeze a lot of detail out of a 2K map. And then one way you can kind of help that is if you start using UDIMs. UDIMs are still going to use more memory, but they won't use as much as, like, say, like a full 8K map. So if you can do two 2K maps side by side and two UDIM tiles, you can save yourself a lot of texture resolution that way. That can help a lot. But just finding ways to work with your hardware can be difficult sometimes. You did a really good job on this. This looks really nice. Like the modeling, the lighting is really cool. The thing that kind of unfortunately just kind of stands out is that it's a war horn and there's no way to blow into it. So just when you're doing stuff like this, make sure you're paying attention to like how the things are actually built, because like you've got the shape of it, you got the silhouette of it, it all looks good. You're missing this hole, and it looks very it's very noticeable that hole's not there. I think I do remember like looking at the minion. So I remember this like I said, this doesn't necessarily serve your portfolio, so it would be something I would get rid of. If you're gonna start looking at going for characters and creatures, go for characters and creatures. But if you want to stick with hard surface, stick with hard surface. You've got some pretty good examples so far of like your hard surface assets. This is a cool stylized hammer. You've got some nice subtle animation in there. I think your main thing is going to be focusing on texturing. Your lighting seems like it's pretty good so far, so I wouldn't stress too much about that yet. But texturing seems to be where you're kind of having issues with, and that's okay. So start looking at how to build your own textures in Substance Painter, how to build your own layers. Because you'll find that as you learn how to build your own layers and kind of work with them, you won't need smart materials anymore. You won't have to rely on them. And you'll start to have a really good understanding on how to get the looks that you're going for. And then, again, like, don't be afraid to hand paint. You don't have to do all of this stuff procedurally either. So when it comes to, like, this pistol, for instance, you know, you've got this, like, edgeware, which is probably procedurally generated, but get in here, you know, paint some dust, paint some dirt. Get some stuff in there that, you know, makes this feel lived in and used, or like, you know, like at least used, not lived in because it's a gun, but like make it feel used and like it belongs in the world. You know, the wood would be losing stain in certain areas where it got damaged or broken. Just try to think of things as logically as possible on like how it would be worn down in real life, and then try to replicate that. And then when you start to try to replicate that in your models and in your textures, you're going to start to find ways to do that on a scale that's going to work for you, and you'll find different techniques on how to do that really help and work for you. So any tips for improving my texture? Just focus on first studying how texture works in real world. So one of the best examples that I have is like go for a walk. Look at the things in your neighborhood. You know, look at trash cans, look at cars, look at old trucks, look at work trucks or old mailboxes. Look at how texture builds up on them over time. So I'll give you, let's do this. I'll give you an example here. Since I can't take you guys outside and just go find something. Let's look at an old mailbox. So that is AI garbage. All right, here we go. Oh God, it's on Pinterest. Okay. Kind of a crappy picture, but we'll kind of look at this. Let me screenshot it so I can zoom into it real quick. Okay. All right. So when you're walking around, take a look at stuff like this. So you can see the damage that rain and sun has done to this, because we know that with metal, rain degrades the surface coat, rain gets the metal wet, and then it evaporates and it leaves behind particulates and it starts to rust, it starts to degrade. But underneath that, or above that rust, because technically the paint is above the rust, you've got these paint chips, you've got these different like areas where dirt builds up, you have degradation and different sort of aspects on how life has treated this thing. And you can see like it's never the same, right? Like this one has been through hell, but this one's all right. This one's not as bad, not beaten up as much. Go around and pay attention to how these textures build up, and then come back and exercise that. Like figure out how you can recreate that. So if you want to, throw together a little mailbox model real quick and start thinking about how you can recreate that texture. So what layers do you have to build, right? You'll need a rust layer, so you'll throw a rust layer down on there. I don't make my own rust because there's so many options for it. Like I don't make my own rust, but I'll throw down a rusty base layer, and then I'll start hand painting in the paint chips and adding in the height of the paint chips and figuring out like how to best recreate that, and how many layers you have to build to kind of just build on top of that. Like think of it as a cake. You're building and building and building until you get to your final result. And so that's all texturing is. It's just building layer upon layer upon layer upon layer until you get this really nice, clean, beautiful model. So that's how you get better at texturing, is you observe it really well and you practice it. That's going to be the easiest way to go through that. Let's see. It can't bring by single attempt for texturing like realistic. I think a lot of hours and work. Not really. No, I mean it doesn't take long. Like it depends on the complexity of your asset, right? Like if you want to really practice with like small things, go to TurboSquid or any other 3D modeling website. Bolts. Change the price to free. Download some of these models that maybe don't have a good texture, and just make sure they're UV'd, otherwise you got to UV them, but play with them. Find simple things that you can play with. You know, you can take this bolt and make it all gross and degraded. So, you know, we got that bolt right there. Go over to Google. Rusty bolt. Boom. You know, you have reference all over the place. So find a simple model that you can work with and then try to recreate that texturally. Don't worry about making the model look exactly like the bolt, but try to replicate that texture. That's the best way to learn how to texture better. You know, there's so many things you could do with this. You can paint the bolt and then have that paint be degrading using some edge wear, and then start hand painting in some rust spots. Like there's a whole combination of things that you can do. But yeah, I mean that's how I learned. It may not work that way for you, but I feel like that's a pretty good way to learn texturing, is just to find some easy real-world examples that you can work with and then try to replicate those in the computer. It's why I do the practice things that I do. You know, like, for instance, if I go in here, if you guys look at my portfolio, you don't see some of the stuff that I've done on Instagram on my portfolio. It's because that stuff is practice stuff. My grapes, for instance. We'll look at my grapes here. These were very simple to texture. These were not difficult at all. So all I did with these was add a little bit of roughness, a couple of little hand-painted spots, and then I went through and hand-painted a couple little grungy maps. But you zoom in on this and you're like, oh yeah, that's a grape. Like, texturing doesn't have to be complicated. You just have to change the way you understand the way texture works. So try to play with layers and try to understand how things kind of build and grow and where things go, and like find as much physical reference as you possibly can and just try to replicate it and just repeat that with simple objects. Simple is key. Like, you don't want to, the last thing you want to do is build a big model, UV the big model and then go texture the big model, because if you're not used to that workflow, you're going to burn out. So find those simple little things and then start building your skills from there. I'm afraid of complex models. While I'm seeing it, it's bringing up fear whether I can do this. You absolutely can. Don't stress about the complexity. Find the simple things. The biggest thing that causes people to stress and burn out with 3D is they try to take on too much at once. I've done it myself many times. It took me almost a year to finish my ship that I started last year because I took on way too much than I could have handled at the time, and I wasn't ready for it, which is why I backed off and I started doing simple projects. So if you look at my portfolio, like, this took 8 hours, this took 7 hours, this took about 10 hours. Like, these were very small projects that I did just to kind of like brush up on my skills and kind of build things. I started this ship the same time I started these sunglasses. But these sunglasses were finished in a day, whereas this took almost a year for me to finish because I didn't necessarily understand what I was doing at the time. I finished BD1 before I finished this ship, and I started it after I started the ship. So don't think that you have to start off hyper detailed and like complex, because you don't. You can start off simple. You can model a pen. You know? You can model a wedding ring. Or you can just texture them. Just find small little simple things. That's all you got to do. Yeah, 4 gigs of VRAM will be enough, but all right, so we're done with Gauthams. And if you have questions, man, just ask them in the Discord. I do not mind. I'll help you. There's other people in the Discord that'll help you. All right, is accurate. When will be the next portfolio review? You mean the next review? I have no idea. But we basically just kind of build up a list of them in the Discord, and I get through them as I can get through them. So if you want to do that, we can do that. But yeah. Nothingness. Yeah, not in a hurry, but when is mine? I'm starting. I just need to keep going through alien pieces. Nothingness. Which one's yours? Is it actually under nothingness? I'm trying to make sure I get through everyone who's actually here first. Ishan, okay. Give me 1 second, I'll get it opened up. I'm not seeing yours. Oh, you haven't dropped the link yet? Yeah, go ahead and drop the link on YouTube. It might not let you. You might have to do it in the Discord, but yeah. I use a combination, Gotham. My rule is don't rely too much on the stuff that does it automatically for you until you have to. Hand painted is always superior. So, in my opinion, but you also have to learn the skill of hand painting first, so it's kind of a mixed bag. So, you know, start with smart materials and then add to them, and then take away the smart material eventually, and then start building your own. Let me know if YouTube lets you put that link in there, nothingness. And is accurate. If you're still here and you want to jump in the Discord and drop your link, we can go ahead and get yours done. For mine, I do Substance Painter. And I do hand painted and like most of this was like a material that was developed or built, but you can kind of see. So just to give you an example while we're waiting on that link, so like all this stuff, this is all hand painted. Like this isn't generated. The camo's generated, but all of the dust and debris, that's all hand painted. Any of the bolts that have like drips coming off of them and stuff, like you can kind of, can you open this? You can kind of see it. So like just the grunge around the bolts, the dirt buildup around the sides, like these are all hand painted. The welds, it's just finding a good mix that works for you. Please check. All right. I don't see it in portfolio reviews. Where'd you put it? Did you send it on YouTube? Because if you send it on YouTube, I think they blocked it. Hold on. I do not see it on YouTube Nothingness. Oh, the colored UV you just added as a texture. Just like you would any other texture. I have pinned. Yeah, I can't see it because it doesn't allow me to actually see links. Oh, you have it pinned on Discord. Wait, what? Bot logs. Why am I not seeing it? Where did you pin it? I have pinned on Discord. Oh, is it Voider? Yeah, there it is. Okay, I see you. Okay. All right, let's take a look here. Okay, so this is really cool. I like that you have already done the thing that I was talking about earlier, which is separating your stuff. So let's go ahead and look at all. If you guys were confused by what I meant, like this is how you can separate your portfolio into different pieces. That's a really good tool to utilize. All right, so let's start with your most recent one. Okay, so let's see. You did like a little food stand. Okay. Let's see. Let me minimize this so I can see my chat because I just lost my chat. Okay. So let's see. For something like this, the thing that I'm noticing the most is just one of those, it doesn't necessarily feel like it's, you know, used and lived in. Everything feels very clean. And so with stuff like this, when you're doing assets like this, you want to make sure it doesn't feel super clean like this. I'm also not sure what's going on up here. But stuff like this is really important to pay attention to because like this looks like there was something that wasn't smoothed and it made it into your portfolio. So paying really close attention that when you're putting your stuff in your portfolio that it's set up and it's ready to go. It looks the way that you want it to, because for whatever reason, I don't know if this is supposed to be like a tarp or something. It looks like it's like breaking off the mesh. Maybe that was purposeful, but something's kind of weird there. Yeah, your textures are just very clean. So with this thing, they're very clean. Like you've got the nice like chalk stuff on the chalkboard, but otherwise everything else is very clean. And so depending on what this is for, like if you're doing this as like visualization stuff, so like concept stuff, I guess I can see that. So that makes more sense, being that it's like concept work. Let's see. Let's look at something that wasn't necessary. Let's look at this one. Okay. Nice. Very cool. All right. That's a nice shot. I like that. I like that you're playing with your environments and you're trying to match the environments in the show. That's really good. Stuff like this, be careful. If you're not showcasing animation, try to keep the animation as limited as possible. You don't want to do like these full scenes and stuff like this. unless you're actually trying to go for a full scene, and like that's the whole purpose of the project. So it's kind of hard to discern, like, was this a modeling project? Was this an animation project? What are you trying to actually showcase here? Your environments are turning out really good. Your texturing looks pretty good. It's kind of hard to tell from the distance, but it looks like you've got some pretty solid texturing. So no complaints there. Be careful with your environments too. Just like, it almost looks like this is floating. I think there's a rock that it's sitting on, but just be a little careful with stuff like that. The animation though is something that kind of throws me off with the portfolio, because like, you want to showcase this asset. Like, this is what you worked on, right? Like, this is where you want to put the actual like work into. You want to show the breakdowns and like what you actually did on this. This is for sure something that I would look at, like showcasing the work that you did. Show the wireframe, show the clay render and the UV. But you have some really nice work in here. Like, this Mustang is gorgeous. Yeah, see this, like what you did here, that first part was great, and then you kind of take it off with the second part. So like, just be kind of like calm with your animations and stuff like this. Just be kind of quiet with them. Let's see, I'll work on that. I was new to UE5, some things didn't work. No, that's totally understandable. That's fine. But no, I mean, like, that model looks great. Everything looks good. I just, again, be careful with some of these, because like your materials get all jacked up there, and like stuff just doesn't seem to work very well there. But that model looks really solid. Looks really good. Let's look at your character over here. So this is that robot from Big Hero 6. Okay. Nice. Stuff like this, be careful. So you see how the blade is just kind of sticking through the mesh? You also can't really... Okay, so there is a thing there. Yeah, you'd want to have some sort of gap here for that blade to like sit in, because you can tell these teeth would just be chewing through that arm. So when you're modeling stuff like this, make sure you're modeling in that detail. Unless you're absolutely not able to have that detail, model in that detail. But otherwise, this is really neat. The dark background, you lose a lot of the model in the background, so it's kind of hard to tell. Honestly, this backlight would be really good on these dark ones, so you can actually see the silhouette of the character, because where it stands right now, it's a little hard to see it. But just be careful with the dark backgrounds on stuff like that. Okay. This is a nice clean model. Yeah, see? You're showing your wireframe here. You got some really good stuff going on there. Everything looks like it's proper density-wise. Like, these eyes make sense as to why they're so dense. Nothing stands out crazily. Yeah, you have some really nice hard surface work in here. I think the biggest thing I'm noticing is just, you know, paying a little bit more attention to your texturing. Try not to go too crazy with the animations unless you're actually working on animation. And if you are working on animation, you need to definitely make sure that you're spending time and working your keyframes in, working in your main poses. Make sure that stuff is flowing fluidly. But if it's just for like kind of like awe in a portfolio piece, leave it out. It's totally cool to have like basic rotations and stuff. Like, I include a rotation in every single one of my posts, but this is as far as I go animation wise, unless I'm actually doing animation, because that's not the goal of this project. The goal of this project was the actual model itself, not the animation. So just be careful with stuff like that. Otherwise, like, you've got some really cool work. You've got some decent character stuff going on. You seem like you're understanding modeling pretty well. It's time to focus on textures, take your textures up a little bit, work on your lighting a tad bit. Yeah, you've got some stuff you can work on, but like, you're showing progression throughout your portfolio, and that's, again, something we always love seeing. I was really new to animation. I just wanted to make a shot from some movies that I really like. No, that's totally cool. I think if you're gonna do that though, add a new tab for animation. It's okay to repeat assets in your portfolio, as long as you're indicating like this was for animation, or I modeled this and then I took it into the next phase and I rigged it and animated it. That sort of stuff is cool to have, and it also shows like your overall skill as an artist. So it's good to have. It's good stuff to have. Just make sure you separate it a little bit, because otherwise it doesn't really play well. And then just get more comfortable with the way that you're breaking down your models. Like, you did a really good job. I think it was it this one? No, wait, which one was it? Was it the car? One of these you had a really good breakdown on. I already missed which one it was. One of these had a breakdown, and I'm not sure which one it was though. But yeah, just make sure you're breaking down your work and your progress and the things that you do, because the people who are looking for like applicants and looking to hire people want to see that you know the technical stuff on top of like seeing the final presentation, because you can fake final presentation really easily. It's all about showing that you understand how to get to that final presentation and you did it correctly. So hope that helps. I mean, you have a good start so far. Just your a little bit of organization, work on your texturing. I think texturing is where you really need to focus now. But yeah, no, I mean, good job so far. I'm excited to see what you do. Good, delete that one. Okay, let's look at Tio. I don't know if Tio is here. Make sure nobody else jumped in and asked. Is there anyone else in chat right now who submitted a portfolio who I haven't done, who wants me to do it? Give you guys a second here. How many more do I have left? That one we're not doing. Let me see. While I wait for you guys to respond, I'm just kind of cleaning up the queue a little bit just to make sure. Okay. I think that's good. All right. Anyone else? No? Okay. So let's do this. I'm going to go ahead and look at Tio. Because this was yesterday that they posted this. All right, Tio. Ah, yes. Okay. I'm thinking of doing some of these old models and retexturing and redoing them better. Like, no, that's a good idea. Go ahead, go for it. All right, so Tio, you also have your portfolio divided up really nicely, so that's good. Let's see. I want to see. Let's look at your commercial work here. Okay. All right. Wow. Dang, man. You got a lot of detail in those. These are gorgeous. I love how you like actually included the detail of the olives like pressing against the glass. That's gorgeous. Yeah, I love your breakdown. I like that you're showing kind of the different actual objects and stuff. Wow. Yeah, those are gorgeous. Okay. So let's see. Making an F1, so you have a tutorial. Pixar Render Man making an F1. Ah, that's right. I remember you posting this one. You got me interested in trying Render Man. That turned out so nice. That's very pretty. Yeah, your texturing is top notch. You've got degradation where you'd expect it. Like, you've got the different material types on each part. Like, this looks like it's tangible and real, and you could just pick it up. The addition of the hand spinning everything, like, very well done. Yeah, that's a gorgeous scene. You've got your breakdown in the back. So I believe this was Let's see. Yeah, so you did a tutorial on this whole thing. That's really cool. Now that's beautiful. That's beautiful work. That's really cool. Let's look at your portfolio. So here's the actual portfolio piece. Yeah, so here's the breakdown. Okay, so let's see. Go back here, 1 second. All right, so you did this. So the TV was a 3D asset. Was this entire scene 3D? Or was only part of it 3D? That's what's getting me, right? Is like, I don't know what was and what wasn't. That's really cool. You did a killer job with this. Okay, so the scene was real. Okay. Yeah. See, that's awesome. You've broken your work down clearly. Like, you have something that had me questioning whether it was real or not, which is awesome. Your textures are beautiful. Definitely don't understand what's going on here, but it's because I've never used RenderMan before. You got a really good breakdown of your UDIM setup. Your model, your topology looks clean. Yeah, your portfolio is gorgeous. This looks really nice. You have a really good like breakdown of everything you've done. I love it. Wow. This is cool. Like, this is the subtle animation that I'm talking about. Like, if you're gonna add animation to your models, like subtle stuff like this. That's really cool. I've thought about doing a ship in the bottle for a long time. That's really neat. These are super fun and super creative. Yeah, definitely awesome job on all of this. Yeah, I mean, I don't have a lot of critiques on your portfolio. The only thing I would say is like maybe the corks don't look like they're necessarily the right size, but that's a nitpicky thing. You have quite the beautiful portfolio. Oh, these were NFTs. Okay, I see. Yeah, you've got some really cool stuff. You show a really good understanding of texture, lighting, and topology too. Yeah, the subtle grunge that you've got on the surface, like, you did a really good job. I honestly don't have very many critiques. I agree with the person who commented in the Discord and said you should just start applying because, like, your stuff looks really good. Yeah, super pretty. Very good job. All right, so that was Tio. I've seen your race car pop up on Instagram, I think a few times now. All right, let's see. So we did Gotham. Get rid of that one. Let's see. Is there anybody else in chat? We've got 15 minutes left. I'm going to try to do a couple more of these older ones that were before today. But if there's anyone in chat who did submit one, who wants to get it done now, now's the time. Let's see, how we doing? Okay. Cool. Okay. All right, so we're going to look at Yashwant Ganjir. Sorry if I butchered that. All right, so let's look at this. Let's take a look. This one caught my eye immediately. Post-apocalyptic AK-47. Okay, that's cool. I like that. So the big thing that stands out to me again here is like the sharp shapes. I know this is more of a stylized kind of application. Just be careful with where you put the sharp stuff, because this wood would still be kind of worn down. And so you have a couple differences here. You have like the worn down wood of the handle on the shovel, but then you have this like sharp cut wood. So try to have the consistency across the model when it comes to like what's worn down, what isn't worn down, like what looks normal and what's, you know, destroyed. Overall though, the texturing is really cool. It's got some really nice like character to it. I love the little happy faces on the carabiner and the happy face on the gun. A makeshift scope. This is a really fun little model. I like this. Only thing I would say is I'd like to see like the breakdown, like show the UV, show the texturing, like show what work you did on this, because it's a really cool asset, and I think you should show that stuff off. Let's see, post-apocalyptic can knife. Nice. I see you like the post-apocalyptic stuff, so that's cool. Very cool. So same kind of thing here. Just pay attention to where your materials are. Like you've got this like beautiful, perfect strap, but everything else is like gnarly and gross. So just try to make sure that you've got that consistency going across it. I love the detail of like the actual Coca-Cola can, and like you've added all like the calorie information on the back. Like you can tell you spent some time on the texturing, and it definitely shows. And then the renders came out really nice. Just be careful with some of the like really clean looking materials almost, because you've got like all this grungy stuff and you have this really clean wrap, which like the wrap, when you think about it, would be like the dirtiest part, because that's where you're grabbing, that's where you're holding this thing, that's where you're using this thing. This strap would be covered in blood just like the blade. So just stuff to keep in mind. You did the presentation here, which I can really appreciate. I like that you showcased your model and your work that you did, so really cool. So that looks, yeah, that's a solid one. I like all your props. Your props are really cool. Radio Kid. Okay, so fun little character, low poly character. Nice. Emergency exit lights, cool. Texturing feels a little light on this one, but you can tell it's a very low poly asset. Like this is just a background asset, so I'm not really gonna nitpick that. This is also one of your earlier works, but honestly, like your texturing skills are getting there. Like there's just a couple of weird little things to nitpick, but otherwise you've got some really nice stuff. I like the sort of combination of things that you have. The one thing I would be careful of though is that you have mostly like grungy old stuff, and then you're starting to mix in these like non kind of like more stylized things. Like I mean, this is gorgeous. Like you did a really great job on this, but you do want to kind of stick to a little bit of a style when it comes to like what you're working on. Like, are you going for these cartoony things? Are you going for these more realistic things or these post-apocalyptic things? And if you're not trying to make that your whole portfolio, make sure you're splitting those off into their own subsections, so you can have like stylized characters or stylized props. And then on top of that, you can add your like hyper-realistic stuff or your stylized like gun and things like that. But otherwise, your portfolio is really nice. You've got some really nice assets in here. And yeah, thank you for sending that one in. I know this one was definitely one of the later ones, but we're finally getting through them. All right. I think we got time for one more. Yeah, we got time for one more. Steve Joshy. This is another old one, so let's take a look at Steve Joshy's. I want to see your portfolio, not just the clock. Okay, cool. Steve Joshy. All right. First off, I would probably look at changing your banner. I don't know if this is something you actually made, but this looks like it was straight from Spider-Verse. Just be kind of cautious about throwing stuff up there. It's not necessarily... It shouldn't really be used as a space to, like, show off and customize like, you know, MySpace would have been. This is where you can either showcase your work, you can add social handles, like whatever you want to do. Just try to keep this like your space to advertise yourself, because like this portfolio is your resume for this stuff. So you want to showcase you in whatever manner you need to. Let's see. So let's look at the alarm clock. Nice. Your texturing on this is really nice. It's grungy and kind of old, and you've added a lot of detail. Your roughness map is playing really well. The glass material works really, really well. Why are those rear knobs so dense? Okay, so let's pause right here. Okay, So, mentioned this one a couple times tonight, but these knobs, this is something we really want to avoid. The super dense, like crazy mesh is kind of a just like dead giveaway that you subdivided way too much. You can't even tell that this is mesh at this point. It's just it's so deep. So try to avoid stuff like this. A lot of the times this could be because you subdivided one time and then you smoothed it with like 3 and then rendered it out. But just be careful with stuff like that, because it shows that like, it almost shows that like there's not an understanding of like topology and how to keep your models like efficient. Like your model looks great, but at what cost at that point? So just be careful with stuff like that. But this is a really nice model. I like this a lot. What is this thing? Old phone booth. Like a sci-fi phone booth. Nice. This is cool. I like the weird combination of like old computer and stuff and like the stickers and graffiti that you got going on here. Your texturing is looking really good. Let's see. Be a little careful. You can tell that those were like images that you slapped on there. I don't know if you were trying to make them look like stickers, but stuff like that shining through. Just be careful there. Otherwise, like, this looks really nice. Yeah, this looks really nice. I like this. Katana. Okay, so blades are always tough. You kind of did it. There's also just, it's, I don't know, it's kind of hard to tell. It could be model, it could be like blade. Let's see if there's a better render of the blade. Blades are always tough. Okay. Oh, that was almost it. Why are you doing this to me? Okay, well, let's look at it from the top image then, because that's the best kind of result. Okay, so with blades, there's always going to be some sort of sharpened edge on these. So you're going to have a portion of the blade that has some sort of differentiating like texture to it. So blades are generally sharpened in kind of like a swiping motion across a stone or on like a wheel. So that whole motion is grinding away at the blade and causing streaks in the blade on like in that direction. So we want to be careful and we want to add that detail. Otherwise the blades end up looking kind of flat and fake. The other thing here is just it looks very dark because of the roughness that you've got going on here. So being a little careful, because most katanas are usually pretty highly polished unless it was like a really old like family relic, but you have this like super grungy blade but this really clean handle. So it's kind of the same concept, like just making sure your materials are cohesive throughout the whole thing, and if you're adding grunge, add grunge everywhere. Don't just grunge the blade and then not grunge the handle, because the handle is where your sweat and your skin cells and all that stuff builds up. So you want that like dirt and nastiness in the handle. That's what we're kind of going for there. So you want to avoid having like just half the model grungy and half the model clean. But otherwise, it's a cool asset. You did a really good job on the wraps themselves. Like, wraps are always super difficult, especially if you're modeling them by hand. Your material on the wraps looks pretty good. It doesn't feel like it's flat necessarily. It's a little flat back here, but as it gets further away from camera, you can't really tell that it's, you know, not flat. The fringes that you've got going on here too with the little tassels, those are really solid. But no, overall, like, you got a good start to everything. Your texturing got really good. I would say now is time, just like I've said with most, now is time to find some things that are going to challenge you. Do some projects that are a little bit heavier and that are going to force you to like really dig into your skill set and try some new things. So whether that be a car or, you know, a bigger prop or whatever, but otherwise you have a really awesome start. I think I've seen your little robot before. Yeah, you have a really good understanding of texture so far, so I say you are on the right path, and you should definitely just keep kind of pushing yourself and trying more things. But, alright, so that was Steve Joshy. We're going to go ahead and delete that one because he's done. Okay. All right. Let's see. What time is it? It is 2:30. Or it's 2 hours and 30 minutes. Let's look at chat real quick. How can I make that one better? Can you check the UV and the robots? Yeah, I can do that real quick. You're talking about the little orange guy? I don't really see an issue with that. It's a little hard to tell because you have the backing color on. It'd be a little bit easier to see the distortion color. I can't really tell what your distortion looks like. But, I mean, I don't see any issues with your texture on the model necessarily, so it looks like you did fine. I would say there's really nothing to improve there necessarily. The model's topology looks fine. The only thing I will say is you've got a bunch of extra space here that you could have filled. There are some cases where you can actually remove an entire tile worth of stuff and just shove it in one, and you can save yourself some compute space by doing that. So it's always good to practice and try to get like this stuff into one of these tiles, which I feel like if you scaled it just ever so slightly, you could probably get this down to 3 tiles, but that's just a nitpick. You don't have to do that at all. I don't see a problem with your UV though. How can I make it better? Like what they add as assets? I mean, just stuff that challenges you. New things that are tougher. Always, like whenever you're starting new projects, always look for new projects that are going to challenge you further. Like, don't stay safe. Keep going into the realm of difficult things because that's how you're going to grow. So, but all right, everybody. It is 9:30. That is going to conclude the portfolio reviews for today. I wanted to make sure we got through everyone who submitted recently. We did. We still have a bunch left in here, so if you were in here and you didn't get taken care of today, shoot me a message. I'm going to try to just handle these one-on-one to clear the queue, because these streams are pretty tough. They're pretty exhausting, honestly. But I want to definitely get these last ones that are in here reviewed, so if you didn't get reviewed tonight and you want to get yours reviewed still and it's in there already, message me on Discord or just comment and let me know. That way I can take a look at them and get them handled. So what should I focus on, as I want to work more on hard surface like reference and everything. Thanks again. Definitely work on like hard surface assets that are going to challenge you. So just like find concept arts that look exciting to you. That's what I do. I just go on to ArtStation, find concept art, and if I find one that really speaks to me, I reach out to that artist and I do it, you know? Thanks again. You're welcome. You're welcome. Yeah. Thank you guys so much for like trusting me with reviewing these things and submitting these to me. Like, I know I don't work in the industry, but I hope my insights help you as much as they can. If you guys have further questions, please feel free to ask them. But until next time, I will be live again on Monday. We'll probably just be working on my ship again. And yeah, so thanks again, everybody. Thank you for the stream. Have a good one. Manahar. Sorry if I butchered that. Thank you. Like how to find concepts. Yeah, it helped a lot. Thanks. You're welcome. Just go to ArtStation. Type in spaceship concept. Boom. Thousands of concepts, and then just reach out to the artist and see if they're cool with you using it. That's how I do it. But I'm glad it helped, guys. Thank you so much for submitting them again and trusting me with these. I really do appreciate that you guys put that trust in me, so it's not lost on me. And again, if it didn't get reviewed today and you did submit your portfolio in any of the previous requests, send me a message or just comment in the portfolio review area. Let me know that it didn't get reviewed, and I will send you a DM and I will just personally review it. I'll probably just send you a video or something, just so I can kind of get through this queue, and then we'll start fresh. But thank you guys so much. I will see you all live again on Monday. You guys have a wonderful weekend and stay safe.